back at it. Sorry about that, guys. So anyway, what I was doing there is I'm able to declare the type directly out of the web service, and I don't have to. I was actually defining it twice. I was defining a return web service, a return structure in order to get the stuff back. I didn't need to do that. So what we do now is say, okay, I'm going to send this record. Object is, I'm sending the current object, which is, since I'm in class mode, object is this class, is the record structure of this class that I'm in, which is the chat rooms rec. And if you look at it up here, that is all of these fields. That's what I'm sending, okay? When I do that, I use the deep assign to assign it because it does not have everything in the object. It only has the fields. So I want to say anything that matches field by field, I want to go ahead and assign to that record structure. And then I say, okay, it's an add, which is an equate to a 1. Okay, anybody that's been in our previous lifetime knows add, change, and delete, and view is 1, 2, 3, and 4. I basically use the same abilities there is what I did. The last thing you do is now we call the web service. This is the web service itself. Now, I'm going to suggest that in a lot of areas you go ahead and use the web service name in front of it. I haven't done this everywhere, but I'm working on doing this now. The reason why is because at least then you know that you're calling your web service. You don't have to put the Chatterbox WS in front of it as the web service name. I think from a self-documenting or a documentation purposes, I think that that's a smart thing to do. And yes, for everybody that's going to be looking at the source on this.
Where the hell is that defined?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and we've gone through that a few times. A few minutes of where in the hell do we define that? Oh, I don't have to. Okay. So, and for all those that are getting the source of this, yes, we are going to put documentation in a lot of these areas. I don't know that it's necessarily going to help you to understand it, but there will be documentation there, including that if you touch this part, you're a moron. Leave it alone. We do have a few of those in our documentation. Is you don't need to understand how this works, just trust it. So anyway, the last thing is that when I return this, I need to return it to my result. This is the only thing different from a WINDEV web service than I've seen in other web services. In other web services, I don't need to do this line. It automatically is in the result, and all I have to do is reference it. Because the web service itself returns the value, what we have to do here is we have to tell it where to return that value. That's what that's for. Again, I use the deep assign, so that way it goes a field by field. Now, understand this. This is case sensitive. Every one of those fields have to be case matching. And the reason why is because it is XML. Basically, it is mapping the XML members across. That's another reason for going ahead and declaring this straight out of the types from the web service. I don't have to worry about case. It's going to match. When that's done, I do the file to memory, which takes that record there that I called and applies it to the memory. It's like doing a deep assign the opposite direction. It's saying to do that, and then I grab the return value directly out of that same structure, and I return it back, and I'm done. What is done now is it's added that to it. Now, from this side of the coin, which is the side that we can't really see, it's received that entire structure there in the chat room. It's come back. It's assigned everything that we want to do. It's saved the record. It's applied it back, and it's returned it. And the last thing I do is you can see that this ret val here is saying, okay, if this rec save is successful, I'm going to set that to true. And that tells me that I had a successful insert, change, or delete. From a delete standpoint or a change standpoint, it's all just fairly straightforward. It really is. So that's kind of it. Now let's be nice, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how this particularly works by going through a debugger on sending a message. This is the same message that you're seeing right now between me and Pete. This is this area right here between me and Pete, and going through. So we're actually going to be chatting on this thing. Yeah. And we hit the send button. Now we're here at our process message. Let's step through our code here and see what happens. Detailed, Andy. I got to go into that. Okay. Now I'm declaring the chat room. I'm declaring my class there so I know what's going on. It's not going to run real fast because when you're videotaping, it runs a lot slower than normal. What I'm doing here is finding which tab that you're on so that way I know which room you're going to. I saw my member sysid. We're going to get the member name, and we're going to be changing a few of those. We're going to get that chat so we know which chat you're in. Set a few things like this that we need to. And here's the key part about this. You see I got a get GUI ID, and I'm assigning a GUI ID to the message. That way every message is totally unique. And for those, and we might even discuss this real quick, but we'll talk about this. You can see I'm doing a date time local to UTC time, which is assist date time, and that helps set up the UTC time so everybody kind of stays in sync. And then I'm going to go save the record. In my class to save the record, I've set this thing up to where it only saves in web service only. What that means is I can literally in the program give somebody a setup to say, yeah, I want to send it via web service, but I also want to save locally at the same time. Or I just want to do local only. Whatever you need to do, I've got switches set up in the whole thing to be able to switch between the web service, not the web service. And what this has to deal with is I'm using the exact same class here as I'm using in the web service. They're shared. So if I make a change in the class here, I can go get it in my web service and apply it. Now, I don't know necessarily that's worked out fine in a lot of areas, but in the course next week, we will discuss the ins and outs and the difference between marketing and real life work because they're not necessarily the same. So I'm going to get the type, which is an ad. This is where I'm assigning to the record what I passed in. If you look at the two here, we can see those real quick. You can see there's my message. There's the message to the world. And I'm assigning it to the other side. And I'm going to add it to my local array because I don't need to go out there and refetch it. And then I'm going to go save the record based upon what I'm doing. Here we're going to go through here, adding it. There's my update type. I'm going to web service only because this is a chat. I'm not going to be saving it locally. I got to go to web service first. Now we're into that process. This is that process that we were working with, right? Step through, I declared the chat message rec, which is the same here. That right there is what we're doing. I'm calling the message and the response, and I'm telling it I want to add one. I'm assigning it to the record structure. I'm giving it the GUI ID to make sure I got it. And now's when I'm pulling the two things in here. Now you can see that if I look at the act record, which is what I've declared here, this is now XML. That's why you're seeing it this way. I can see the type, you can see the text, so now you know you're in XML because of this. It's hard to see, but there's a 1 in there. You look at the record structure, the same thing. These are all XML. That's the reason why you know it's XML, because you got a text underneath. And now you've got, there's my message there. Again, it's hard to see because they should just make it black on white and you can't edit it, but they don't. So now what I've got is the full record structure there that I'm sending. I go ahead and send it. Now if I look at the response side, I've got the same thing on the response side. This is the response side. You can see that it's only one element. There's not two, there's only one. And it has returned me back the exact same record with the same GUI ID. That's that return side that you're getting back as a single element. Then I assign it to the local record. I go ahead and put it to a file to memory. And then I've got my return value, which is true. And I send that back. And when I send that all back, everybody's happy. Life is good. Chat room is now working. And we have the message here on the screen. Okay? Now, it is not as daunting as you think. It's not as hard as you think. And the reason why is because as Pete and I have been going through the original classes, you can see there's been a tremendous amount of additional work done on it from the first time that you can get out there on WX Live and take a look at you know, the training and stuff where we talked about the base classes and the base management classes and the base record classes. These have matured. These are more what I call middle-aged classes right now. They're in pretty good shape. But they're also set up that I can use them now with a few switches and some virtual work and be able to work on mobile, be able to work on web service, or be able to work on desktop anytime I want, or web. Because Pete, even though he doesn't have to because he's on the web, he's got some of the web stuff going directly to the database, and he's got some using web services. And the reason why is it's not that it's necessary to go to web services. It's an exercise of can you do it from the web? Can you write things using web services only and make it work decently? So we had to prove that point, and that's what we did on the web service. And of course, next week he's going to be explaining how that is all done, okay, and what he's done to make that happen. Plus, you know, the development of the website itself and things like that. So that kind of settles down the direct data types to and from WebDev. Now, arrays, when you're sending back a set of records, they did not change. You still have to serialize and deserialize them, so they haven't changed at all. Okay, they're still the same. So don't the previous videos of this, those still work for the serialization and deserialization of those. But as far as going to update one record, return that record changes, going to do this or do that, you can certainly do that, and works very nicely. You just have to set it up properly. Since there is no real examples of setting that up, this is the closest you're going to get to it, and obviously you can always holler and I'll help you go through this. One of the things that I got talked to about yesterday, Adriano is in here with us. He's from Brazil, speaks Portuguese fluently, English, I don't know, but he can type English. He's had a problem with a particular program, a mobile program, bringing in a web service. There are a lot of the older web services that rely on SOAP technology. They're not the advanced data types. They're basically straightforward, almost the same as SOAP. And in a lot of areas, what happens is, and maybe it's something I've done, or that I guess we haven't quite got a clarification from PCSoft yet to understand it, but you're not able to consume the web service and treat it as you should. It's not working exactly the way it is. So you have to revert back to the old style of using SOAP calls themselves. Okay? When you run into one of those, and I'll kind of show it to you here. When you run into one of those, you really have a kind of a problem. Get down here where he's got the call. And I'm trying to figure out some of this stuff because that's deal is written in Spanish, and believe me, I'm not good at Spanish either, so I'm kind of working through it. If you can push me to the right, type in, Adriana, the right name of the one we were working with. I forgot which one it was. I think it may be this one. Yeah. Okay. No, it's not. Wrong one. Anyway, the class itself, or the web service itself, is a call to validate or register the client is what it is. It's a call to register the client. You can see there's nothing underneath it. There's no data underneath this at all. It's a straightforward call. When you use it, it's really giving you kind of a fit, is what it does. Okay, it's in here. So he's not able to get the response back that he thinks he's supposed to get back. He sent it to me, and I took a look at it. And basically, the only way to actually get the response back is to use the older version SOAP call, which, in essence, what you have to do is you have to create the SOAP environment up here, the SOAP string itself, and put %1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the values that you want to send, and then you get back the response via SOAP get result. Problem is that won't work in mobile. You cannot do direct SOAP calls out of mobile unless you use JSON or bring in some Java code or something like this. Okay, so how do you solve the problem? Don't. My suggestion is to take these classes or create a set of classes that do the SOAP calls directly. In other words, take all of this stuff here and put it in a web service. Put it in a WINDEV web service that does work, because I have done a lot of this. We're doing this. We do the web services in there. And basically what I would say to do is you're going to create a web service of nothing but the SOAP calls that you can't make work in the mobile. In doing so, you create the structures that we just went through, the return values to you, and you call that web service from your mobile. So it is kind of funky that you're calling a web service from a web service. That is true. But what it is it is translating that web service that is not supported directly into a web service that is supported directly to the mobile. So instead of trying to fight for hours and hours to get this SOAP call to work within the mobile that it won't, you move it to a WINDEV web service, you run the web service, and the mobile devices then talk to that web service from WINDEV to WINDEV, which does work, and let the WINDEV service do the SOAP calls directly to the other web service. I know that's confusing. I'm confused. Okay. Anybody kind of understand what I'm talking about there? You got something you got to write manually. When they first started using web service or SOAP calls, WinDev is capable of using raw SOAP calls. And I think I may have one up on my mobiles. That's Chatterbox. No, I don't have one up. Okay. I'm not going to start one. It'll take too long. So when I was doing this for Goodyear, what they were SOAP calls directly to Goodyear that you did not have a direct web service for. You had to use a different SOAP protocol. The different SOAP protocol is because the user ID and password had to be in the header, and we could not get it in via the web service. They did not have a methodology via the web service to send the user ID and password with whatever you're sending. I think it's kind of dumb. If you ever have to have a web service with a user ID and password, then what you need to do is create a token. So when you send the user ID and password, you send back a token. And that token is what is sent with every message to the web service, and it allows you then to work with it. Okay? Don't be ignorant, because it's stateless. One call does not equal the next. You got to know who you are when you send stuff. Anyway, the web service I had to code just like this. Basically, every one of them had to be a direct SOAP call. And that's what I did. I went into SOAP UI and I created, had it import, give me all this stuff here. I did it, got the return results back, parsed out the results, and put it in the record structures. Everybody was happy. Life was good. We went on about our happy business. So what that taught me was, though, is that every web service, if I have a problem with it, I can always go back to this as the brute force. Here's your hammer, beat the fire out of it, off and running, we're going to make it work. And it does. It works. It works perfectly every time. The problem is that where can you use it? Well, you can't use it directly in mobile devices, so what I'm thinking in my suggestion to Adriano is take this, put it in WinDev, create a web service out of the WinDev, just like we did the Chatterbox web service, have it return the structure just like we were training here, and move the results from this into that structure and do a ret val on their structure there, and rock and roll. Your mobile device now works like a charm, and that's because it doesn't have a clue or doesn't need to know how this works. It just needs to be able to communicate. Okay? So instead of going directly to the web service that they provided, we're going to use an intermediate WinDev web service to communicate to them instead. And it may take another second or so for it to process through, but it'll work just fine. And you can get around your problem. So don't beat your head against the wall if you think you got to do SOAP in mobile. Don't beat yourself up for it. All you have to do is work around the problem, which is something that we've done for years, is work around the problems. I think it is pretty, in my opinion, don't get me wrong, I think the mobile should consume the SOAP services. Don't get me wrong. I really think it should. I also think that we ought to be able to send in the web service that does not work and say why, or have some better documentation on the web services on pulling this information back. I agree with that, because I know people will be saying, hey, well, why didn't they give us better examples? It's hard to give you better examples. It really is, because of so many different areas out there. But they do provide the tools if you think a little bit outside the box, and that's what this is doing. So irrespective of what is or is not supported in the mobile or the web, you have to work around the problems. I'll give you another example of this, and this is something everybody can relate to. Pete on the web runs nothing but HTML. So everything's got to look like HTML. This right here is all HTML stuff. Okay? But in WinDev, you cannot display HTML, or it looks very badly, HTML in a table. It only supports RTF. So what do you have to do? Well, you have to do a conversion from RTF or from HTML to RTF in order to show it here. So what we've done is the mobile can only support RTF as a control. The edit control down here only does RTF or text. This one here can do RTF or text or HTML for WinDev, so I can do all three in WinDev. And Pete's got HTML, obviously, on the website. So, in essence, I've got three different things and none of them match. The only one that does all three is WinDev. And this is a problem that we all kind of run into when we try to code for all three different areas. Number one, WinDev itself will probably cover all three. Mobile may not, web may not. So what you got to do is the minute you start thinking, hey, I'm going to write something that is common between all three platforms, you need to stop and think first. The first thing you need to stop and think about is what is or is not compatible between the three of them? Or what do I need to write that will make them compatible? And that's what we've done. We spent a tremendous amount of time going back and forth doing nothing more than working through classes and things like this to make things compatible between all three environments. So let's separate the marketing that you can use the same code in all three environments. Yes, I can use if this equals this, then this in all three environments. But I cannot necessarily use an RTF control in all three environments. I cannot use an HTML control in all three different environments. I can already tell you this, and I can't put a table on a mobile device. We already know. So there's a lot of open areas that are not the same. So when you go down a path that you're going to write mobile devices for the same thing as your desktop, and they got to look exactly the same and use the same data and use the same controls and show everything, and you're using RTF on the WinDev, and then you say, well, I need to display that on the web, and then all of a sudden you say, wait a minute, RTF sucks on the web, you need to have HTML. Now you're going through a whole lot of fits when what you need to do is think about this up front and say, what is compatible? How do I make it compatible? We're going to be going over that next week. One of the things that Pete's going to be showing and teaching is the deal with the web, how to set it up, how to set up a web environment to make it look nice, make it run well, what he had to do to make the classes and information to work with the web and the development cycle he did on it. I'm going to be going through each one of the classes in depth from ground up. And yes, I've got flowcharts, and we've got pictures, and we got big crayons and things like this, but we're going to understand how things work. And then we're going to start talking about how we communicated between all three of them, making them work or not, and telling each other that how much of this is practical from a practical development and maintenance standpoint versus how much is capable. That's two different things in my book. Capable of doing is not necessarily being practical in doing it. Okay? That's the way I kind of look at it. All right? So other than that, that's about all I got. Anybody got any questions? Let's see what we got here. Yeah, anybody got any questions to do that over what I just talked about? So we are chatting. Yes. I love it. You see, I can go to multiple chat rooms. We have that. Have multiple chat rooms running at the same time, which is pretty cool. I kind of like it. I guess everybody's either dumbfounded, half asleep, or dead. All I know, there will be a release of the software of what we've done so far today. I'm putting one out today. About time Tim woke up this morning. There'll be another one, which is kind of the final, well, okay, we'll call it semi-final. That'll be out Sunday for those that are attending. They'll have the source to this for attending to look it over for a few days before they get there. I'm looking forward to next week. I really am. I know Pete is. You're leaving Saturday, right, Pete? I think you're going to be there Saturday because you got to talk with a couple people that's going to be there.
I will be up there Saturday evening. Yep.
I won't be there till
I will be there
Tuesday.
Saturday evening.
Yeah. I'm due to arrive Tuesday, so I'll see everybody Wednesday morning in the courses. We'll have our other gentleman there will be there teaching the first 2 hours, which is the classes demystified, and that'll allow him to kind of get you geared up for what I'm going to go through and what Pete's going to go through. And we're going to start it off and have some fun. We'll have some fun. And of course, we'll have all the food and coffee and libations in the evenings and things like that. Be a lot of good friends there that we haven't seen in a while. I am bringing the Harley, so hopefully it won't be dry enough. It's been raining practically every other day here, so hopefully it'll be dry enough. Otherwise, the wife's going to stay there and I'll drive my truck in. So, other than that, if anybody's got any questions, post them out there. I'll be glad to answer them. Other than that, we're going to get out of here and get to work for a living. What we got here? Nope, nothing. Okay.
Just nothing at all.
Y'all have a good,
I don't know what's happening.
I guess nothing. No, like I said, either I put them all to sleep or they're so overwhelmed they just have no way of knowing anything. They don't know what they're talking about. And I know Alan's just freaking out because he's talking about different stuff. Yeah, I'll see you next week, Alan, for sure. Okay? So y'all be good or be good at it. Thanks for joining me this morning. I appreciate it. And we will talk to y'all later.
Thanks, Andy.
You bet. You bet. Stick around, Steve. I'm going to call you on Skype here.
Okay.
See ya.